Imagine a world where the laws that govern our lives are not mere suggestions, but divine commands, etched into stone by the very hand of God. This is the world of the Ten Commandments, a set of moral and religious principles that have shaped Western civilization for millennia. But what if these commands, so often seen as the unchanging bedrock of morality, are not as ancient as we think? What if they evolved over centuries, reflecting the needs and values of different eras? This video will explore the origins, evolution, and enduring impact of the Ten Commandments, challenging some of our most deeply held assumptions about their divine origins. The Ten Commandments, also known as the Decalogue, are among the most recognizable and influential texts in human history. They appear in the Hebrew Bible, specifically in the books of Exodus and Deuteronomy, and are central to both Judaism and Christianity. But who wrote them and when? The traditional narrative, as told in the Bible, is that God gave these commandments directly to Moses on Mount Sinai. This story has been accepted by religious communities for centuries. But modern scholarship paints a more complex picture. The commandments themselves are a mix of moral and religious principles, ranging from the prohibition of murder and theft to the command to keep the Sabbath holy. Some of these principles, such as the prohibitions against murder and theft, are common to many human societies and could have been part of early Hebrew law. However, other commandments, like the one about keeping the Sabbath, suggest a more settled agrarian community. The person addressed by the Sabbath law has slaves and domesticated animals to help with farm work, indicating a lifestyle far removed from the nomadic or desert-dwelling people that the Bible often portrays as the recipients of these laws. This discrepancy has led some scholars to question the traditional timeline. By the end of the 19th century, many Old Testament scholars believed that the Ten Commandments were a distillation of the ethical teachings of the great prophets like Amos, Hosea, and Isaiah. This would place their composition much later than the time of Moses, likely during the period of the Hebrew kings or even later. In the 20th century, a conservative backlash against this late dating emerged, partly due to the optimism generated by biblical archaeology. However, this optimism was short-lived, and the majority view today is that we know very little about Moses as a historical figure. This skepticism extends to the Ten Commandments, which are now seen by many scholars as a relatively late addition to the biblical narrative. The commandments may have passed through several stages of development. Some scholars have tried to reconstruct an original core of 10 concise rules, but this effort has largely been abandoned. Instead, the current view is that the commandments are an amalgamation of elements from different periods. For example, the prohibitions against murder, adultery, and theft are reflected in older texts, such as Hosea chapter 4, verses 2, and Jeremiah chapter 7, verses 9. The command to keep the Sabbath and the prohibition against coveting, on the other hand, seem to reflect a more settled agrarian society. The commandments also vary in their structure and emphasis. Some are brief and to the point, while others are accompanied by detailed explanations and motivations. For instance, the command to honor one's father and mother is followed by the promise of a long life in the land God is giving. This promise of future rewards is a common theme in the commandments and the broader biblical narrative. Deuteronomy, in particular, emphasizes the consequences of obedience and disobedience, promising blessings for those who follow God's laws and cursing those who do not. However, not all incentives are about future rewards or punishments. Some commandments appeal to the reader's sense of justice and compassion. For example, the command to return a neighbor's cloak before sunset is accompanied by a reminder that the cloak may be the only covering the neighbor has. This appeal to shared human experience suggests that the commandments are not arbitrary, but are rooted in a sense of natural morality. The context in which the commandments are presented is also important. They are part of a larger narrative about God's relationship with the people of Israel. This narrative includes the exodus from Egypt, the giving of the land, and the covenant between God and his people. The commandments are not just a list of rules, but are part of a story about God's love and provision. This narrative context is crucial for understanding the commandments and their intended impact. The commandments also reflect a partnership between God and his people. While they are presented as divine commands, they are not meant to be followed blindly. The Jewish tradition, in particular, sees the law as a living document that must be adapted to changing circumstances. This adaptability is a key aspect of the commandments' enduring relevance. Christians, on the other hand, often view the commandments as absolute and unchanging, which can lead to a more rigid interpretation. Despite the scholarly debates, the Ten Commandments continue to influence moral and legal systems around the world. They provide a framework for understanding right and wrong, and their principles have been incorporated into various legal codes. The commandments also serve as a reminder of the importance of community and the responsibilities we have to one another. Whether viewed as divine commands or as a product of human wisdom, the Ten Commandments remain a powerful and enduring symbol of moral and religious values. In conclusion, the Ten Commandments are a complex and multifaceted text, shaped by centuries of tradition and interpretation. While their divine origins are a matter of faith, their historical and cultural significance is undeniable. Whether we see them as ancient laws or as evolving principles, the Ten Commandments continue to challenge and inspire us to live lives of integrity and compassion.